Hi, and welcome to Finding Your Flow, the podcast. My name is Jen, and I'm your host. I'm inviting you here to intuitively lead and live your most aligned and expansive life. I'm an intuitive business and leadership advisor for heart-centered, impact-driven leaders, entrepreneurs, and businesses. And I'm also a supporter of women's empowerment and animal rescue work. Unlocking flow and supporting you through your next level of growth and transformation is my superpower. I found my own freedom and flow through entrepreneurship over a decade ago. And on this podcast, I'll be sharing stories and insights through the lens of my expertise and my personal experience, and through inspiring conversations with my special guests. I'll be helping you navigate your most important asset, your intuition, supporting you in getting unstuck and staying on your most successful and aligned path. I want you to leave with aha moments, deep insights, clarity on your next steps, and more importantly, an inner knowing that where you are right now is perfectly aligned. Life needs you where you're at your best. All right, so let's get this podcast party started. Hi, Mindy.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, and you?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you. I love the work that you're doing so much. And I just feel like today in the conversation, there's just so much for us to learn from you about your experience and the work that you're doing. So I'm excited to dive in.
Well, thank you. I'm looking forward to it. I love chatting with you. So
Yeah, I know. It's so fun. We met on Clubhouse in
yeah.
an event, and I remember just like hearing your voice and feeling just such a high vibration energy when I was listening to you speak. And I remember I went right over to Instagram and found you. So I would love if we can start by you just kind of telling us a little bit about who you are, what the work is that you're doing, and how it all started. Like, how did you get into that work?
Oh goodness. So yeah, it's a fun story. It's been an adventure. At the I always say at the heart of my story is really my disability. And so I was diagnosed with a neuromuscular condition when I was only about 15 months old. So I have lived and experienced life from a wheelchair. It's what I've always known. It's always been my normal. And I've really kind of architected my life around it, not to say that it hasn't come with, its hardships and things like that. It's given me a lot of really great opportunities to learn to navigate adversity well. And, there are other things that have come up in my life that have taught me a lot. I've been in a couple of really serious car crashes that have come along with some pretty serious injuries and obstacles and situations that those have created. I've lost jobs. There's been quite a variety of things that I've walked through in my life. And so, like I said, it's given me the chance to get really good at navigating adversity. And I had a 20-year career in high tech, and it was a really successful career. I enjoyed what I did. I had a lot of great opportunities there. But about 3 years ago, I had been working at this one company for about 6 years. They were acquired by another company, and as tends to happen, they moved people around and reorganized and did a number of things. And the team that I was managing at the time was actually sort of relocated or rehired for overseas, in Lithuania, actually, of all places. And so, I'd been with the company for 6 years. I could have tried to move somewhere else in the company. There wasn't a lot of alternate hiring going on. And I just thought, it's time for my next big adventure. And so I left the company. I did a ton of job searching. I thought that I was going to go on to my next corporate job, looked for a job for about 10 months, which really took a toll on me. And, I know that there are a lot of people out of work right now and maybe going through this. And, I had a very specific moment in my bathroom of all places. I just washed my hair and I was, I had gotten another job rejection that day. And it was, 10 months had gone by. I was doing tons of interviewing. I was getting really close on a lot of jobs. And this one in particular, I was so excited about, and I was positive that this one was going to be the one. And so I was really surprised when I didn't get that one. And so, I'm a relatively naturally positive person. But I was getting a little dark, and my brain was starting to have all the thoughts and the feels. And I had taken the opportunity. I've done public speaking my whole life. And so while I was out of work, I was like, well, I'm going to do some public speaking and do some more motivational speaking. So I'd already been doing some of that. And as I was having this moment, I started to think about the speaking that I'd been doing. And I was like, you know what? I have a choice right now in this moment. I can either become the worst version of myself and be this angry, frustrated person, or I can take my own advice, frankly, and I can write a book about overcoming adversity while I'm sitting in the middle of this big pile of adversity. And so that was it was just this pivotal moment that I haven't looked back from ever since. And since then, to answer your original question, I kind of took the long route to get there.
Perfect.
But, since then, and I didn't stop looking for a corporate job for a while after that, but I started also, really turning up the volume on the motivational speaking. And I did, in fact, the very next day start writing the book. And since then and what was interesting was, the second that I made that choice, the second that I made that decision, things got so much easier, and it's one of those things where you can just be slamming your head against a wall in one direction, trying so hard to make something happen, the thing that you feel like you're supposed to do, or is, the responsible adult thing to do, or, whatever, however you want to describe it. And then, when I listened to, some of the cues and things that were being given to me, and I made this choice to pivot. And I'm not going to say that it was easy, but people were put in my path that have been game changers and who have honestly changed the trajectory of my career. And now I am full-time doing the speaking and the writing. In fact, I just got a book contract. So I am, in real time, I am writing this book. My first draft is due on August 1st. And it's evolved into, I do coaching, and I have a podcast, and I've got a couple of other projects that are in the works that I'm super excited about. So it's just been kind of a magical couple of years where I've really learned. And it's interesting because before we started recording, we were talking about surrender, and that's exactly what I did over the last couple of years. I really let go, which is hard for me because I am a class A control freak. But it's been kind of a long, windy road, but it's been amazing.
Yeah. Oh my God. And I just realized now, like, the purpose of the card that I pulled for us before we started, the surrender. I think that there's going to be so many beautiful lessons coming out of this conversation today about surrender. And, there's a quote that I absolutely love that says, man plans and God laughs. And I love this quote because, we try to plan and control and figure things out from our head so much, or from what we think we should be doing. And I'm, all about intuition and really finding your flow through leading and living your life intuitively. And it's interesting how like in moments when like life is literally trying to like change our trajectory and like move us into a more aligned path, it's like we don't even see it sometimes, and we fight against it. And when we actually just surrender to what is happening, so much magic can happen. And I think this is such a perfect example, right? Of like this life that you're living now that you didn't even realize was available and accessible to you. And it's like that for many of us. It's like we think we know the life that we're supposed to be living.
Yeah.
But I believe that we're often seeing things through a very limited perspective.
Yeah. And, there's a lot that clouds our perspective. We grow up a certain way. We have certain influences in our lives. We go to certain schools, we, have certain jobs and, all of those things, rightfully so, shape who we are and the way that we look at the world and our goals and our vision for the future and all of those things. But, I think that there's, I don't know if I want to call it an art to kind of being still and listening and learning to recognize these sometimes very subtle redirections. And sometimes they come in the form of inconveniences. I mean, job loss is a huge inconvenience.
Yeah.
But, and sometimes they're not quite as overt as that. Sometimes, like I said, they're a lot more subtle, but I think that there's really something to paying attention and letting yourself to an extent be led. And I never would advise someone or be a proponent of being reckless or making irresponsible decisions or things like that. But like in my case, the writing was so very on the wall. And, I'm a huge fan of Oprah, and she talks a lot about how, sometimes life whispers and then sometimes life shouts if you don't hear the message the first 1,000 times. And I felt like that was really my shout moment. And I have never felt so much like I am in the right place at the right time, doing exactly what I'm supposed to do. And it just so happens that it's all about serving people and helping people realize their potential and navigate their own adversity, because adversity is, of course, something that we all encounter. We've all walked hard roads. We all have challenges. They may look different to all of us. I'm sure not everybody listening has spent their life in a wheelchair, but guaranteed they've had their own set of struggles and things. And so that's what I'm getting to do with my life now. And I love waking up and getting to do what I do every morning.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so true, because we all have things that get in the way in our life. We all have things that come in to challenge us, and I really believe, and so I guess the question I want to get to, first of all, I friggin' love the name of your podcast, The Truth About Things That Suck. That's the name of your podcast. And is that going to be the name of your book also?
It is going to be the name of the book. Yes.
And that is going to sell out. I'm telling you, it's like such a good title. And
thank you.
I love it. And I wanted to ask you, so based on all of this, what do you think is the purpose of the things that suck and the things that get in our way?
Oh, how long do we have?
Oh, all day.
So much. And, and I think that it varies to an extent, from person to person and what your challenge is and all of that. But I think that one of the really, I am a big fan of another author named Sean Aker. He's Do you know Sean?
I love him.
He's amazing. And I
Oh
actually
yeah.
had the opportunity to interview him for my book. And he's,
Wow.
if for anyone who doesn't know him, who may be listening, he's a happiness researcher. I mean, how
Mhm.
cool is that, first of all? But he's got, I think, 3 or 4 books out at this point. One of them is called The Happiness Advantage. And one of the things that came up in our conversation is that, in any given moment, there are multiple realities
Mm.
that can all be true at the same time. And so one of the things that I really took away from my conversation with him is that, you may be sitting in the middle of something that's so hard and
Mm.
so painful, but there are also things in your life that are wonderful. There are
Yeah.
people who love you. There are, maybe you've got a little bit of money in your bank account. You've got food on your table. You've got air in your lungs. Guaranteed, if you look around, no matter how small, there, and usually there are some big things that are such blessings and such gifts.
Mm.
And those things are just as true and just as real in your life as this other thing that you may be going through.
Mm.
And what Sean said was that sometimes the realization of that is enough to start to kind of pull you out of the
Yeah.
suck of your situation,
Yeah.
because, and it's not to say that you want to deny the feelings, because sometimes, another thing that he said to me is sometimes it's okay to not be okay for a while.
Right.
But it's also, I think, very healthy to recognize that even though this thing is really hard, there's still some great things in your life, in your community, in this world that also exist,
Mm.
and that can kind of shift your mindset a little bit, I think.
Yeah. And I really believe that every single hardship that we go through has a purpose, and it's
Mhm.
always there to help us step into an even more expansive version of ourselves, right? So
Yeah.
it's like everything, and it's never about just one thing. You're right, because I remember the other day I was having a one of those entrepreneur moments of financial contraction anxiety,
Oh
because
yeah.
the entrepreneurial journey is up and down all the time
Yeah.
financially. And I remember thinking, like, you know what? It's not just about the dollars in my bank account. And I went to sit outside. I literally put everything aside. I went to sit outside with a cup of tea, and I
Mhm.
just sat and looked around me at, like, the beautiful house I had and the beautiful lush backyard that I had for my
Yeah.
dogs and all the things that were also symbols of abundance, And it really pulled me out of, like, that focus towards, like, the one thing that I felt was broken in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
it's so true. And
yeah.
actually, it's funny that you're saying this, because I'm a big proponent of meditation. With
Mm,
my physical challenges, I've needed to find something in my life that could help me combat the toxicity of
yeah.
stress and anxiety and all of that. And meditation for me, call it meditation, call it stillness. It's something that's really, really helped me. And I love to do guided meditations
Mm,
sometimes. And the other day I was doing one that was centered on exactly what you're talking about. It was so cool. And I think that this is something that any of us could do at any time that is so healthy and so grounding. But the person that was navigating us through the meditation was talking about, obviously you're sitting there, you're closing your eyes, you're paying attention to your breath, but then one by one, they called attention to our senses.
mm,
And, they said, hear the sounds that are around you. And those sounds are symbols of abundance.
mm,
And, the abundance that we're sitting in, they're representative of the things that are surrounding us. And smell, and those smells are representative of the abundance and all of the things that are around us. So, I say give it a try sometime. It was really
Yeah.
powerful
Yeah.
for me, and I absolutely loved it. But I also want to say before we move off of this question, because like you said, there's so many, I think, purposes that we can find in abundant, or I'm sorry, in adversity and our challenges. And, I definitely think that one sort of secondarily to the first thing that I said, I think that one of the biggest purposes for challenges in our lives is the character that it builds up in us. And if you think about it, I've actually, in some of the talks and things that I've given, I talk about the definition of adversity, and it's going to suck. The very definition of it uses terminology and words and language that are, are very indicative of how challenging, how painful, how sometimes traumatic, whatever the case may be, these things are. But I also believe that adversity kind of serves to define the good in our lives.
Yeah.
And so, I run people through this exercise of kind of imagining living in a world where nothing bad ever happens, and if that were, I mean, on one hand, it sounds kind of great, but on the other hand, would it be that great? Because you wouldn't recognize, I don't think, or appreciate any of those good things, because they wouldn't be defined exactly as anything good. They would just be the norm. Right. And so I think that I could go on and on, but I think that our struggles and our challenges are one of the most character building things in our lives. They give us strength and courage and creativity and problem solving skills and patience and all of these things. But then I also think that they serve to define the good in our life, like I was kind of saying earlier.
Yeah. Oh, it all has such an important purpose for us. And I don't know if you've seen the show, The Good Place. Have you?
You know what? I haven't. It looks so cute.
It's so good. And it's exactly about this. So what happens is that, these people die and then they go to what they think is heaven, the good place. But all of these people that are going into the good place are actually people who were not really good humans. And so they're making them believe they're going to heaven in order to torture them, because in the good place, everything is perfect. Everything is perfect. It's like, there is nothing wrong. There is no stress. And it's like, and then in one of the later episodes, one of the ways they torture them is by giving them life, for infinity. So perfect life for infinity. And that actually becomes a form of torture for them. Because really, what would we be striving towards if there were not bumps in the roads and challenges? Because I really think that we're here as humans. Our purpose is to come and access the most amount of growth that we can while we're here. Right.
Yep.
So, it's just, I think you would love the show. It's so
I'm
good.
going to check it out. That sounds like something that I need to know about in the context of what I do. But you're absolutely right. If we never experience something hard, nothing could ever be exceptional, And so, while the challenges aren't fun and maybe wouldn't be our choice, they definitely give you a perspective and an outlook on the good things that show up in our lives.
Yeah. And when I think back, and I don't know if it's the same for you, when I think back to all of the really difficult moments in my life, I have some, very traumatic things that have happened. And even in 2019, I had a massive nervous breakdown. And when I think back of if I could, would I give that up and erase it? Never, because I would not be where I am today and have everything that I have today if I would not have gone through. It was like portals, I see the difficult moments as portals. And I don't know if you feel the same way, even about your disability. Like, would you be doing the work you're doing today?
Yeah, I don't think I would. And as you were talking, I was thinking about that. And you're right. I think my disability gave me this career,
Yeah.
truthfully. And I do, I know everybody listening has their own beliefs about things, but I've always kind of felt like this particular thing was chosen for me
Mm,
specifically,
yeah.
because somebody knew that I could do something good with it, there are other challenges that I've seen other people struggle through. And I don't know that I would have been the person to be able to do something good with
Right.
that,
Right.
so I do think that, again, if you kind of surrender to your circumstances,
Yeah.
and I think that that's when you can sort of start to see the gifts, and call it surrender, call it acceptance. But I think that's when you can start to see the gifts that come along with, this kind of cruddy thing that you have to
Yeah.
go through. And
Right.
the other thing that I'll say about purpose is that sometimes I think that there are very specific times when we may not get to see the purpose. Does
Yes.
that make sense? I
Yes.
think that sometimes, and this may be a tougher pill for some people to swallow, but I think there are times when something that I may go through
Mm-hmm.
is intended to be a lesson for somebody else. And I may never know what that lesson was or who it was that
Yeah.
it was intended for. But I think that if you can also kind of accept that as truth,
Yeah.
then it can give you some peace about your situation. Does that make sense?
It does. And I have chills actually as I'm hearing you say this. And you actually just, reminded me of something. Like I was telling you the first time we chatted, my little brother, Tyler, has cerebral palsy, and
Yeah.
he is a friggin' warrior. Like I can't even believe what he's done. Like he's
Yeah.
literally, he's learned to walk. He has a job. He's done the Spartan race, which is like this. It's kind of like Iron Man. It's just like
Bananas.
I don't even think I could do it. Honestly, I'd probably die halfway through. He's just friggin' incredible. He drives four wheelers and tractors, and it's just like he's incredible. And
Mhm.
I think that one of the purposes of his disability was to change us.
Yeah.
And I can see how his experience is having a huge ripple effect on all of us, the family, and how it's just opened up our eyes, how it's healed certain relationships, even in our family.
Yeah.
So it's huge. You're so right.
Yeah.
What we experience in life is always going beyond just us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
yeah, I agree with that.
Mm.
Um, and I'm curious to know because I'm a really big believer that we have moments of breakdown in order to have moments of breakthrough. Like the
Yeah.
breakdown is the initiation to the breakthrough. And
Yes.
sometimes they're like tiny little breakdowns. Sometimes they're massive ones, like the one I had in 2019. And you told us a little bit about the bathroom floor one before, which
Yeah.
I love it. It reminds me of like the eat, pray, love moment when
Oh, I know. It was totally an eat, pray, love moment.
yeah,
Yeah.
on the bathroom floor. But is there like one, maybe it was that one, or if there's another like really defining moment that you've had where, or a really dark moment or a breakdown moment that has brought you through a massive or really important breakthrough?
Yes. Yeah. There's one other that I'm going to tell you about, but first, I want to give you kind of this analogy that I love to use, and I love the way that you framed the question because, talking about breaking down so that you can break through or build up. what comes to mind for me is kind of the mechanics of building muscle. You know, if you think about working out, going to a gym and, you know, pumping the iron or whatever, you're breaking your muscles down so that they'll build back up stronger and stronger. And I think that metaphorically, that's what happens to us emotionally when we go through these moments that kind of break us, but we come back stronger, you know. And so I wanted to say that first, but the other moment that was kind of defining in my life, it's funny, I think I told you this before, but I always have believed that, again, my creator had a really good sense of humor when he created me, because I was created with these physical limitations that make me dependent to an extent on other people. And yet I've got this fiercely independent spirit. And so it's been kind of an interesting contradiction to grow up with. But what it's driven me to do is to fight through the limitations and to see possibilities where limitations once stood, so to speak. And so I've worked really hard to create a life for myself where I can be as independent as possible and live life largely like anybody else would. And the two things that have given me that life are, first of all, I drive a car, which is it's a super cool minivan, but I don't know if you can hear my dog snoring, but it's really loud.
It's fine. Birds are singing here too, so it's all good.
But it's been adapted for me to drive, and it takes like a year to build this car, and it's super high tech. It's all like touch screens and buttons and things that are kind of at my fingertips. So that's the first thing that, you know, allowed me to work a 20-year career and get to and from work every day and get myself to my own doctor's appointments and go to the grocery store and anything that anybody else would go and do with their days. The other thing that's given me so much independence is I employ personal care assistants. I have a couple of them who come in and out a couple of times a day to help me get out of bed in the morning, get dressed, use the restroom, cook meals, keep the house tidy, get me to bed at night, bathe, you know, all of those things. And so I don't have to be reliant on my family. I can live in a home and, you know, be a wife and a mother and all of these things. So anyway, I think it was probably like 15 years ago. Maybe not quite that long, maybe 13 years ago, but there was a point in my life when I lost all of that. And I'm not kidding you. The first to go was my car. It started having some mechanical issues, and you can't take this car to any mechanic. And so it had to go to Houston, and it turned out that the repairs and the maintenance and things were really complicated. So I was without my car for a few months. And so I couldn't get to my job, and I couldn't get to the store, and I think my daughter was about 6 or 7 at the time, and I couldn't take her out and about and do the things that I wanted to do as her mother. And then, so I was working from home. My company was really gracious about it. But I was secretly, you know, wondering how okay they really were with this. You know, they were saying they were okay, but were they really okay?
Yeah.
So that was all happening. And then I had 2 assistants at the time. They both quit effective immediately on the same day.
Oh my God.
So in one fell swoop, I lost like 95% of my independence. It was bananas. And so I was devastated. You know, it did awful things to my spirit. And, it was defeating and it was demoralizing and all of these things. And I went through a period of time where I was, negative and depressed and complaining constantly. And then I was talking to my mom one day, and we were kind of commiserating about the awfulness of the situation. And finally, I heard myself, and I actually said to my mom, you know what? I need some new thoughts right now. I need some new thoughts. And it was one of those moments, we all have these loops playing in our heads all the time.
Right.
And I realized that I needed to get intentional, and I needed to get good at listening and paying attention to what these voices, what these loops were saying, and to actively replace them with more positive thoughts. Because that state of mind wasn't helping anything. It wasn't constructive. It wasn't solving any problems. And when I started to look at things a little bit differently and get to a more healthy place in my mind where I could be more constructive and more positive, the problems started to clear up. I was able to work with people better. Not that I was a difficult person. That's not why they quit. It was weird circumstances. But, I was able to, basically get back on the horse and do what I needed to do to take care of business again, and rehire for the assistance that I needed, and, partner with the car place to try and get my car back to me a little bit quicker, and look for some solutions and things like that. So I think that was the other time in my life. And that's another muscle that I've really had to build up over time. And I may be making it sound really easy. It's not. And I recognize that it's not, but the more you do it and the more intentional you are about it, you do build up that muscle, and it becomes a much more over time natural way of thinking for you, so that when things do go sideways, you can go a little bit more quickly to a more constructive place.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love this story because, and I'm circling back to something you said at the beginning, like how it's okay to give yourself a moment to just feel crappy about the things that suck. And I think for me, I've also really learned that have the moment where this sucks. I feel like crap, and do all the things that you need to do to release. And then knowing when it's time to shift out of that, and then really moving forward. Okay, how can I use this as something that is going to propel me forward? So
yes, and that's the thing. I think that there were times when I was a kid when I was sad and things sucked and I couldn't keep up with the kids on the playground. And I had people in my life who wanted to pep talk me and make it okay and all of that. And while I appreciated it, sometimes you just want to say you're right.
Yes.
that sucks. And it's okay that sucks right now.
Yeah.
And it's okay that you feel bad about it. Because the last thing that you want to do to somebody who is in that mind space where something is so awful is to then make them feel wrong for how they feel about it.
Yes.
Exactly. But I will also say, I do think that we all get to a place in our own minds when we know, you can try to deny it, but I think we all know when it's time to move forward to, leave the pity party and move on to some solutions and, looking for some purpose and all of those kinds of things.
Yeah. A friend of mine, who's also my intuitive mentor, and she's a dear friend. She's been with me through all of my moments in the last 6-7 years. And when I'm having my moments of whether they're small or large breakdowns or just really difficult moments, I often message her. And she does exactly that. She always holds space to be like, I'm so sorry this sucks right now. I'm so sorry this hurts right now. And then she always ends with, but please be nice with my friend Jen. She's a really good person.
Yeah. Oh,
And
I
I think,
love that.
right? It's like just remembering
Yeah.
to be kind with ourselves and not be so hard on ourselves for
Yeah.
what's happening and what we're feeling. And I also, I'm just coming back, like, you got to watch The Good Place because you're going to love Janet and how they reboot her every once in a while. When you were
Yeah.
saying that moment where you said, like, I need some new thoughts, I was just thinking of like those moments in The Good Place when they reboot Janet and just like fresh new mind, you know?
Oh, I love it. Oh,
So
yeah. I'm
funny.
definitely going to have to check that out. It
Yeah.
sounds amazing.
Yeah. And I'm curious, well, I have two questions, but well, I guess they're kind of interrelated. So I'll ask kind of both simultaneously. I want to ask you a little bit about like your thoughts on intuition and how intuition has played a part in your life. And more specifically, like when you lost your job and all that stuff was happening, I'm curious, like, did you feel something coming or were you yearning for something else? Were there whispers? Yeah, tell me.
Yeah, I love those questions. You know what? I think to answer your second question, I think the short answer is yes. I
Okay.
knew because it's funny when I got the news about the layoffs and things, I I felt I felt a little bit relieved and
I,
excited,
yeah,
because I like I said, I had had a 20-year career to that point,
yeah,
and I wasn't worried about myself.
yeah,
It was the first time I ever had to lay off my team, which was hard. And that
right.
wasn't that weighed on me a lot harder than my own circumstances. But for me, like I said, I'd been there so long and I was kind of yearning for the next adventure. And like I
Mm,
said, I thought that was going to be in corporate America, but I was excited by the prospect of what this cool new shiny thing was going to be. And it turned out to be so much shinier and so much cooler
yeah.
than I thought it was going to be. But yes, there was something inside of me that was excited when I
Mm,
learned the news. And to your other question, I do think that I'm a fairly intuitive person, and I say that from the from two perspectives. Um, I make decisions very quickly. I've
mm,
never been someone who ruminates and takes days to make decisions about things. I make and I don't know if it's because I've learned to trust my intuition or if I just don't have the patience to spend days and weeks trying to decide something. Maybe a little bit of both, but I've always been a person who kind of gravitates toward a particular decision and kind of goes for it.
mm,
um the other thing is I think I'm fairly intuitive about people.
mm.
I tend to, I think, fairly reliably get a pretty good read on people when I meet them, when I have a first interaction with them.
Yeah,
And it's funny because I'm not going to name names, but there are people in this space, in the self development space,
yeah.
who were so beloved and held in such high esteem. And there are two people that come to mind. And they were up on this big pedestal. Both of them, a year or two after I met them, were convicted of fairly serious crimes um, against people.
Oh,
And so and I remember when I met both of them, I came away kind of going, huh, I didn't get a great feeling. I didn't get a great
yeah.
vibe from them. And I dismissed it pretty quickly. But yeah, I do think that I'm fairly intuitive about people.
Yeah, I love that you make decisions really quickly. And actually sometimes waiting too long is what gets in the way of us actually hearing our intuition because then we're like stuck between
So true.
brain chemistry and like intuition. And
Yeah,
also
it gets all clouded.
yeah, exactly. You don't know which is which anymore. And I really believe that we also receive a lot of intuitive information and clarity through action. It's like
Yeah.
you don't have to know if it's exactly the right aligned thing all the time. Sometimes you just need to step forward, you know?
Yeah, and I think I've learned that also. I think that I somewhere, whether it's a conscious thing or not, when I'm making decisions, I think somewhere in there I know that if this ends up being the wrong decision, I can pivot,
Yep.
or I can learn from the mistake, or I don't believe really in mistakes. I think that
Yeah.
mistakes are just learning opportunities.
Yeah.
So I think if you have that outlook
Yeah.
about, and don't get me wrong, there are decisions that are life and death decisions
Yes.
that I would certainly be more cautious and more careful with. But yeah, I think just knowing that, no one's going to die, and this is not going to be the end of the world.
Right.
If, it may be inconvenient, but I'm going to learn
Yeah.
something. So
Yeah. I tell my team that all the time. When we're working on things or like any of us is getting stressed, I always say like, guys, we're not saving lives here. It's
yeah.
really not the end of the world. Like we're gonna be okay, even if we mess something up.
Yeah, I had a boss. I worked in the financial industry for some of my corporate career, and specifically in the corporate card space.
Yeah.
And I had a boss who would remind us regularly if we were getting a little too wound up about something or too worried about something. He would be like, guys, it's corporate cards.
Yes.
No one's
Exactly.
going to die. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think we all have a fear of like messing things up, but I've learned
yeah,
my most important lessons in messy moments. I think there's so much wisdom in them.
yeah,
Yeah. So
definitely.
yeah. And tell us a
Yeah.
bit about just your beautiful life and your beautiful family. And what do you do? What do you do like for pleasure? And what do you do when you find yourself out of flow? Because I talk a lot about flow, being in your flow. And I tell people all the time, flow is not this thing that you catch it and you're in it all the time. It's you're in it and out and in it and out, and I'm curious what you do also to just get back into your flow.
Yeah, good question. So first of all, my family, I've been married for, oh, I think I've been married long enough that I have to stop and calculate years. I think this August is 18 years. Holy
Wow.
cow. So I've been married for 18 years. He's a great guy. He's super supportive of what I'm doing. We have one daughter who is college age, and is very actively asserting her independence and creating her own life, which is beautiful to see. And I just adore her. I'm a huge animal lover. I have a puggle named Mr. Papa Giorgio,
Oh my
and
God. So
and a
good.
cat named Birdie. So I like kind of ironic, silly
Yeah.
pet names. And yeah, I this is gonna sound a little bit lame, but I work a lot. Um, I I work so much, but honestly, I love what I do.
Mm.
It's not to say that I don't have other hobbies. I love to read. I love to cook. Now that the world is opening back up a little bit, I'm a huge movie person. I love going to. It's funny. I find that going to actually to a movie theater is one of the only things that can get the voices in my head to shut off. And so I love going into a movie theater and just getting kind of immersed.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I love, coffee shops and spending time with friends. But it's funny, your second question about getting into your flow, what I've learned, becoming an entrepreneur as someone who is risk averse to begin with, and is still relatively new in the entrepreneurial game. I've learned so much about mindset.
Mm.
Um, where it's related to having your own business and, being the only person who's responsible for what you do, and being the person that not only has to do the work, but has to look over my shoulder and tell
Yeah.
me to do the work, and all of those things. And I mentioned how much I work.
Yeah.
And what I've learned is that even if you love what you do as much as I do, you can still burn out.
Oh,
And so I've that's been something that's been interesting to sort of recognize when it's
mm,
coming. And I think I've gotten better about feeling like it, like, okay, I'm pushing too hard and I'm getting out of my flow. And this is becoming too hard. Writing this email is too hard,
mm,
or, completing this project or writing this chapter is too hard. And I've started to see that as a sign that I'm getting burnt out, just
mm.
like you're talking about getting out of your flow. And so what I've learned to do, honestly, it's not magical at all, but I've learned to stop
Yeah.
and to binge Netflix for an afternoon, or, to actually give myself time off and to let that be okay. And the letting it be okay has been the hardest part for me. Again, class A control freak. But I've learned that that's truly the best thing that I can do for myself
Yeah.
if I get out of my flow, because I think that when that happens, you need a little bit of space and a little bit of distance from
Mm,
what you're doing. Maybe it's that you need to, maybe it's that you're tired, maybe it's that you need to get re-excited about what you're doing. Sometimes I'll go back and I'll revisit my mission, vision, and values,
mm.
or other things that I've written um, that sort of embody what I do, what my why is, what I'm trying to accomplish. And sometimes those are the things that get me re-excited and get me back into that creative flow.
I love that. And I agree, actually getting back into flow. It's never about these big grandiose actions, about really simple
Yeah.
things. And what
Yeah.
you're talking about of like being able to listen when like you're trying to do something really simple and it's feeling hard. It's like
Yeah.
it's like okay, it's time to like stop now.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
a lot of us don't listen to that and we wait till it's too late. So,
Yeah, that's true.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think, and you make a very good point, because I think the deeper into it you get, the harder it is, and the more time, frankly, it's going to take to pull back out of it. So I do think that that looking for and learning to recognize whatever your own signs
Yeah.
are is really a constructive thing to do.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think we're in flow when our cup is full. And when it's
Yes.
not, it's like, it's,
Uh-huh. Oh,
yeah.
you know what? I love that you just said that, because I actually had one of those days this week where I wasn't feeling well, and some other things had come up that had me in a little bit more of a negative space than I normally would be in. And that 100%, I think, affects your creativity
Yeah.
and your ability um, to focus and all of those things. So it's true. The other thing that I would suggest, and that I did for myself this week, was I'm a big proponent of watching a comedy. And I think laughter is so healing.
Yeah.
And so if that's the problem, if that's the headspace that you're in, I think doing something either to find some humor, or to ground yourself in some gratitude and some
Yeah.
abundance
Yeah.
is another thing that can help pull you out of, or pull you back into your flow.
Yeah. Oh, laughter. I have to agree that it always works for me as well. And watching something funny is just,
Yep.
it's so healing. I
Yes,
completely agree. Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. And if ever people would like to, you know, like either work with you or, you know, have some sort of touch point with you to kind of
Yeah.
soak in your wisdom, what is available right now?
Yeah. So my website is mindyhendersonco.com. And so, that's a great place to go if you want to send me a message, or even on my coaching page, you can book a free consultation with me if
Okay.
you want to just talk about what your goals are and how maybe I can help. That's one way to do it. I'm on Instagram at Mindy Henderson Speaks. And I love getting DMs from people and hearing from people about what they're doing, what they're struggling with, how I can help, what kind of content I can put out there that would be helpful for people. And then I'm also on LinkedIn if you want to connect from a professional perspective. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook. But yeah, I love hearing from people, and I answer all my emails and all of
She
that. So
does. I will say Mindy always answers very quickly.
yeah.
Yeah. And I'm going to find you on LinkedIn because I just realized that I didn't know you were on LinkedIn. So,
Oh yeah, I'm just Mindy Henderson on
okay.
LinkedIn. So
Okay.
yeah, you can find me there too.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
Um, God, I feel like I could pick your brain for like hours. There's so
Oh.
many things that I feel like we can chat about, but I think that, it's going to be such a treat to have this book coming out into the world.
Mm,
I
thank
can't
you.
wait to read it and dive into it. And Yeah, I'm just curious, like, kind of before we end things, is there anything else that you are feeling called to share or that you would like people to know? Since we spoke about surrender at the beginning, we were saying like
Yeah.
we're gonna listen to what wants to come through today.
Yeah, I have a couple of things that come to mind. For whatever reason, the first thing that I want to say is, and my own health coach actually, I stole this quote from her. She said it to me a number of times, but it rings so true. The common denominator between every single person who has ever accomplished a goal is that they didn't quit.
Mm,
And, if you really think about it, big goals, small goals, whatever it may be, professional goals, personal goals, health goals,
yeah.
every single person didn't quit until they got to the finish line. And so, yeah, for some reason that's on my mind right now. And so anyone who may be listening that is feeling, frustrated, or like something is taking too long, I believe that when you're working on a goal or some sort of, you've got some sort of ambition for yourself, challenges will be put in our way.
Mm.
That's what makes goals hard. Otherwise, we would do them every Tuesday and it wouldn't be a big deal, you know? And I truly believe that the obstacles and the challenges that are put in our way are just tests
Yeah.
of our commitment.
Mm,
And so, from a coaching perspective, that's something that I say to people a lot,
mm,
because every challenge that comes up, it if it's not overcomable, maybe it's changing your direction for a reason.
yeah.
Maybe it's redirecting you into, sort of a bigger, better version of what you were trying to do in the first place. So I think that's one of the first things that I want to say. And then, the second thing is just that, there is one me on this planet, there is one you on this planet.
Mm,
And I think that that is for a very specific reason. And so, if you're not appreciating yourself, if you're not loving yourself, know that, if something has been created that's unique as you are, and
mm.
only one of them was ever created, that's pretty special. And so I think that if you're struggling or having a hard time finding reasons why you are magnificent, that's reason enough.
Oh my God, that's so beautiful. I freaking love that. And I totally agree. And even I would say like to link the two things you just mentioned is that like each of us is so unique, and the reason why we're here is so unique. And so I
Yeah.
love how you talked about, what gets in the way is like just testing our commitment to our
Yep.
path.
Mhm.
And, I've always said that like the yearnings we're having are a way for life to give us a preview of what's waiting for us in the future.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
we need to really trust those yearnings, whether it makes logical sense or not. And, so many times I've been an entrepreneur for like a bit over 12 years now. Many times over those 12 years, people in my life have kindly encouraged me to stop this crazy thing and just go get a job.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
oh my God, sometimes I think of like, if I would have not really stayed committed to this path and listened to them, um, I don't even want to imagine the life I'd be living right now instead. Like
Yeah.
it's scary, so
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing, it is your life and you're
yeah,
responsible for your happiness.
yeah.
And so, while other people may be well-intentioned, and we can thank them for their love and their support
Yeah.
and their advice, but they're not living our life. And
Exactly.
so it's up to us to find our fulfillment and our joy. And sometimes that means declining some very loving advice and going your own direction. And that's okay.
Yeah. I totally agree. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing those last little
Yeah.
bits of wisdom. They were great. I'm going to put all of the just links that you mentioned in the show notes of the podcast so people will be able to go find you. And just thanks so much for hanging out with me and talking about all this wonderful stuff.
My pleasure. I had a blast. It was great. And the time flew by. I can't
I
believe.
know. My goodness, it's been over an hour. I agree.
I
It flew
know.
by. Yeah,
Yeah, but I could do this all day. So
I
thank
could.
you for having me.
Thank you, Mindy. And I can't wait to put this out into the world.
Love it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for spending time with me here today. I want to leave you with this little bit of wisdom. The actions you're not willing to take or the decisions you're not willing to make are the ones that will change your life. Trust your intuition, take the leaps, follow what you know to be true, even if it's not always easy or convenient. Your words mean the world to me, so if you have a moment, please share them by leaving a review of the podcast or sending me a testimonial. And I would love if you would share this episode wherever you feel called to. If you want to connect with me, you can find me over at jenniferjaneyoung.com or on Instagram at jennifer.jane.young. Talk soon.